and I'll alert you ahead of time to our WhatsApp number 05555610034. We are sitting to discuss, as I'm sure you may have guessed for our preamble, the movement for change, and the man who is leading that drive, former Trade and Industry Minister and now presidential candidate, so presidential hopeful, leading this movement of change from the backyard of the butterfly. So Mr. Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen is our guest for this morning, and he will be seeking to explain to us what his great transformational plan is for Ghana. Honorable, thank you so much for making the time. Welcome to GTV Breakfast.
Thank you very much, Stelma.
So I saw this document yesterday.
You did?
The Great Transformational Plan, Stability, Growth, Resilience and Prosperity. Yeah. It looks good aesthetically, but more interesting is what it contains. Yeah. And you're saying this is the Bible, according to Alan.
Yes.
Tell us about this. What's the plan?
Very well. Every country to move forward needs to have a sense of direction. And you can only have a sense of direction if you have a plan. And when the plan is documented, then that becomes basically the roadmap for your development.
So this is your manifesto?
This is my plan. The reason why I call it a plan
and not a manifesto,
is that if you audit the manifestos that parties have produced over the years, and remember, I've been around for a long time, so I understand exactly what I'm talking about. Typically, the manifestos are expressions or aspirations of each political party, intentions. And you typically find that the statements in the manifestos do not provide enough detail for a guide to implementation. That's why they are called promises. I will reduce inflation. How are you going to reduce inflation? I will stabilize the currency. Exactly what are you going to do to stabilize the currency? But if you make a statement which suggests that you will stabilize the currency without giving a sense of how it will be done, then that's only a promise. And when you go beyond the promise or the aspiration or the intention, and you provide a sense of how you are going to operationalize that promise, then you have the beginning of a plan. In fact, that is even just the beginning of a plan, because you need to go even beyond that and then detail out the specific programs and projects which then you cost to become your national budget.
But some of these are also aspirations, and it's stuff that you hope to do because they have not yet materialized, in the sense that we have not seen some of those end goals or end games. And when you talk about the plan to build an enterprise economy in Ghana, you have your own roadmap to achieving that: private ownership and initiative, promoting a competitive market, and, you know, more broadly, stabilizing the economy, incentivizing the private sector. They all seem like something we are aspiring to. So how is this different from what we've heard over the years already and what we will hear this year on the campaign trail?
So Thelma, let's make sure that we understand ourselves in terms of the terminologies, because that's where the difference comes.
The terminology?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not in government now. I'm not president.
Okay.
I hope the people of Ghana will make me president. Now, so you make a statement about what you intend to do when you have power.
A statement of intent.
A statement of intent. So the difference between a manifesto promise, which is a statement of intent, and a plan, both of them are futuristic. You intend to do, that's why it's called a plan.
Yeah.
Because if it's already done, that's execution. But when you go further to elaborate your aspiration and what you intend to do, then that is the beginning of a plan.
Okay.
So, and as I said, I will stabilize the currency. If you don't, and if that's what you intend to do, but you need to be able to tell us how you're going to stabilize the currency.
So how will you do that?
Yes, so, and again, that's why I call it a Bible. So and maybe let me give you an overview of how the Great Transformational Plan is structured. Now, it has 6 clusters. The economy, the infrastructure cluster, the governance cluster, the social services cluster, and there's the cluster that deals with the environment and natural resource management. And then there's a cluster also on attitudinal and mindset change. So these are 6 broad clusters. And each cluster...
And in those clusters are the details.
Yes, so now you're getting close. So in each cluster, let's say if you take the economy, there are pillars. So for example, you take the economic cluster. Under economy, there are 11 pillars under that cluster. And why do you need those pillars? Because, for example, if you make a statement that you transform the economy, what about the economy are you going to transform? That's the question you should ask. So you start off, the macroeconomy is a major part of it. But that's not all. The macroeconomy, which will deal with things like inflation, your currency, your interest rates.
Debt to GDP ratio, which is currently at 80.
So that's the macroeconomy. That's why you talk about macroeconomic indicators. But yes, it's important. The macroeconomy is important. But what are you going to do to be able to stabilize the economy, for example?
So share some of those ideas with us. One is the stabilization of the city, for example.
Yes.
Inflation rates are what they are, and now the currency has not consistently performed well against its major trading partners, fluctuations in the currency market. What specific things will be done to make those figures look better?
So
under an Alan Cash?
Now, as I told you, it's just like a Bible.
So let's turn to
to page 60.
The book
This is the
GTP.
gospel according to Alan, the GTP gospel. So if you turn to page 60, you are interested, for example, in how you stabilize the currency. And so you look at it, and the first prescription, so under each of these pillars, it talks about how you are going to do it. So it says, review the operations of foreign exchange bureaus with a view to eliminating speculative and unauthorized trading of forex. So we've not just made a statement that will stabilize the currency. We are telling you the practical solutions that will enable us stabilize the currency.
Is that not being done now to regulate the activities of the forex?
It is for you to look at what is being done now and what we are proposing. So it says that review the operations of the forex to eliminate speculative and unauthorized trading of forex. If that is being done, you do not find the level of depreciation that we find now. Because how do the forex bureaus influence the exchange rate? It's very simple. They are trading currency. If in their own opinion, for example, it is likely that the cedi will depreciate further. Now, if it's trading at 50 cedis to $1, there's no control. The next morning you go to your forex bureau, he tells you that I'm prepared to buy your dollar at 17 cedis. I'll give you 17 cedis for $1. So you go, you have the arrays there. Then he puts it down. And then the next day, if he decides that, oh, now I'm prepared to pay you 18 cedis to $1. So they set their own rates. There's no regulation. Are you aware of that?
The central bank sets some of these rates so that it can monitor what the banks are doing with regards to...
you have to be careful about what you are saying.
Okay.
You are not speaking on behalf of
I
the central
do not
bank.
dare to speak on behalf of the central bank.
So
but
that's what I'm saying.
As a regulator...
So, but you're absolutely right. So this is an excellent point. So all I'm saying is that review the operations of the forex with a view to eliminating speculative trading of foreign currency. So the emphasis here is on speculative trading of currency. If you write 16 cedis to $1 today, and the next day 17 cedis, that is speculative trading of the forex. Because you are controlling, basically, you are determining the rate. But the Bank of Ghana, which has its own way of determining the rate, because they are also monitoring the demand and supply of forex. That's why you always find that the central bank rate for forex will be much, much lower
than the commercial banks.
Not just the commercial banks, but also the forex bureaus. So basically, the first thing is to make sure who are those trading in foreign currency. It's very simple. It's the central bank, and then by extension, the commercial banks, and then the forex bureaus, and then the black market. The black market is an undercover operation. So it is not something that you can control because it's an undercover operation. But the forex bureaus are licensed to trade in forex. So if they have the capacity to determine how much they want to sell and buy foreign exchange, and it involves speculation. Speculation is because they are there to make money, because they get their commissions on the trading of foreign exchange. So you cannot stabilize your currency in a regime where you have forex bureaus that are private entities, and you cannot eliminate through oversight, as you were saying, the efforts and the operations of forex bureaus. Then that's a major part. But it goes beyond that if you read. So it says that enforce existing regulations on the repatriation of foreign exchange proceeds from exports. Yes, you can try and deal with the forex bureaus, but you always have to think, so how else is foreign exchange acquired? When you export, you are paid in foreign exchange. And because the central bank has regulations that when you export, you should repatriate or send the forex to Ghana, and then you are paid in cedis. You are allowed to retain a certain percentage of that. Yeah. So there are regulations.
Okay. And the forex is one of them. Let's get to other instances of trying to stabilize the economy at the macro level.
Yes.
The specific measures that you, for example, roll out to balance our public spending. You've been talking a lot about that. And that feeds from macroeconomic stability into the governance sphere.
Yeah.
I heard you talk about reducing the number of ministers to 40. I've read that in the book as well. Yeah. Which of the ministries are you going to collapse, and what criteria will be used to collapse them? And then we can talk about perhaps the other thing about the Council of States that you think we do not need.
You see, the government expenditure must always be kept under control, because if you don't have the revenue to spend, then obviously you have to reduce your spending. Otherwise you get a deficit. It's just like at home. If you are spending more than you are earning, there's always a deficit in your household. So you have to borrow to be able to finance that deficit. It's the same thing with an economy. Now, when we talk about government expenditure, what is government spending its revenue or income on? A major part of it is government spending on, let's say, compensation for public officers, including ministers. So if you have a country, a small country, a size of Ghana, and you have 40, you have how many ministers? Almost like 85, or even when you add almost 100 ministers. Then obviously, remember that you have to pay compensation and other emoluments, allowances. So the first step in reducing government expenditure is to make sure that you reduce the size of government.
What criteria?
In terms of
the ministries, for example, you're talking about substantive ministers, you're talking about deputy ministers. So how are we picking and choosing which one to remain and which one to get rid of?
If you read it, you see.
I have read it, but for the sake of those who haven't.
Yes, so I have specifically said that the Constitution provides a guide for us as to how many ministers. 19 cabinet ministers. That's what the Constitution says. And then it goes further to propose that each region must have a minister. So basically you have 16 regions. If you decide to go by the Constitution and you have 19, so 19 plus the 16, that gives you 35. So in actual fact, anything above 35 ministers
is discretionary.
Is discretionary. So I am saying that if government expenditure has to be controlled, that we have to start with the size of government. And so if we are not spending money on other things, which still we have to pay for, then the best thing is to start with your own administration. And that's why I am, and for the first time, if I become president, it's very easy because I have given all the breakdown for ministerial appointments. The only ministerial appointment that is mandated by the Constitution is the Attorney General. Beyond that, you can decide whoever to appoint as a minister. So, for example, my proposal in this is to combine Ministry of Finance, Trade, and Industry. I've been Minister for Trade and Industry before. And I know I've been Minister of Trade and Industry twice, under President Kufuor and under President Kwadwo. Unless there is a strong connection between how the Ministry of Finance is run and how the Ministry of Trade and Industry is run, it will be very difficult for you to move an economy forward. And so I've combined the two. And then you have other ministerial positions.
Yep. So you're talking about maintaining reducing the size of government, including appointing not more than 40 ministers, is what you're saying. The Attorney General, which is the statutory requirement. So you're combining finance, economy, trade and industry, food and agriculture and fisheries, foreign affairs and regional cooperation, defense as a standalone, education as a standalone, health as a standalone, interior as a standalone, infrastructure, which is an interesting one because it just brings together the Ministry of Transport, calling it the Minister of State for Transport Infrastructure, Minister of State for Communication and Digitalization, you're putting them under infrastructure as well, and the Minister of State for Public Housing, Water Systems, Sanitation, Waste Management and Sewage Systems. Isn't that a little broad for one person to oversee all these sectors?
So Thelma, so what we've done or we've proposed here is that whether you are talking about roads, railways, or you are talking about digitization, communication, infrastructure, or whether you are talking about housing, water systems, those are all infrastructure-related activities. So if you combine all these infrastructure-related activities and you put them under infrastructure, and you have ministers of state for each category under that. So that's why you have a minister who is responsible for infrastructure. And then below him, you have a minister of state that is focusing on transport. So right now, transport is a full minister, it's a full ministerial position. And then you have communications and design. Now it's a standalone. Now here, that also becomes part of the infrastructure ministry. And then also you have, because you see, what you have to appreciate is that if all these are infrastructure-related activities, then there's a need for you to be able to establish a certain broad framework for how you want to deal with infrastructure. And that is why you find that combining them immediately saves you a lot of government resources. And then you come to energy and natural resources. Then youth and sports, then local government, environment, science and technology and innovation, tourism and culture. Right now we have tourism separate from the Minister for Culture and Chieftaincy. You don't agree with me that there's a commonality that makes sense if you put together.
So our tourism is linked with our chieftaincy, our culture.
Yes, so tourism and culture. Okay. And then, of course, labor. So why do we want to have this very elaborate government machinery? So what does that do for us?
A suggestion has been made that those could work.
Yeah.
Some of the proposals you've made could work. In fact, under the current administration, we are told that, for example, salaries of some cabinet ministers have been, put aside or is being removed. Some allowances are being saved so that we can better finance other projects. Under an administration of Mr. Kyerematen, how will we know that the benefits derived from downsizing a government would feed directly into the lives of Ghanaians? We want to have a clear plan on how balancing this thing could benefit the Ghanaian.
Oh, but this is simple logic. You need to provide services for the people of Ghana. Health, education, blah. And you need resources to be able to provide those services. If you are spending all your income, all your tax revenue on bloating the size of government, how then do you retain income and revenue to support? You are talking about improving people's lives. So obviously, if you reduce the size of government, then you save some resources which you can now deploy to provide services that will improve the livelihood of individuals. This is just common logic.
There's some, you make comments about the Council of State and why you feel that we do not necessarily need them.
Well, if you read the provisions in the Constitution establishing the Council of State, essentially they operate more in an advisory role. They're advisors to the president. Now, our view is that for us to deepen our governance architecture, there has to be control over executive action. Yes, I want to be president, but I want to be president who is responsible to the people. And there has to be areas of the Constitution that would limit the powers of the president. So by introducing new structures in our governance architecture that is able to regulate executive conduct, you are only ensuring that the checks and balances actually work.
One of the key issues on the heart of many Ghanaians lately is the cost of food items. What is your plan for ensuring a reduction in food prices, especially of the basic commodities on the market?
Yes, and I'm happy you've raised this because Ghanaians are worried about inflation, the rate of increase of prices of goods. That's what inflation is. Now, the biggest challenge with inflation is food inflation. Now, if you want to reduce food inflation or the prices of food, number one, you have to be able to increase production. And again, this is also very simple, basic economics. Once you increase the volume of output, the unit cost of production reduces. And when the unit cost of production reduces,
when there's more supply,
the unit cost goes down. If you're producing so much tomatoes, then obviously the unit cost will come down. And so the first policy that we need to embark on to reduce food inflation is enhancing production. But if you're still using hoes and cutlasses, and your agriculture is based on
traditional farming practices,
and apart from it based on traditional farming practices, it's also based on smallholder farming, then obviously the increase in agricultural production will not occur. So whilst, yes, smallholder farming is important, you also need to support commercial large-scale agriculture, because you're talking about increased production. So that's number one. It will bring food prices down. But number two, it's also about transport costs, because food is produced in rural communities. And when you cut food from the farms into the marketing centers, a major cost factor is the transport costs. So it's not just about increasing food production, but bringing that to the market becomes an important part of the cost buildup.
So what's the
that is why you also have to reduce transport costs.
How do you intend to reduce that?
Yes,
because fuel prices.
Yeah, what goes into transport? Transport costs is one, fuel prices, as you've said. Number two, the cost of spare parts. The cost of spare parts. And of course, if your exchange rate is depreciating, and this is the connection between the exchange rate and then inflation. So if your cedi is always depreciating and you are importing spare parts, then obviously it means that the cost of spare parts will be going up. It will be much higher. If the cost of spare parts go up, then the cost of transportation would also go up. And so when people, those who run the transport business and bring food from the farms to the market centers, if he has to buy a car part for his vehicle, and because of the depreciating currency, then obviously you will charge more for that.
I want to hear more about your plan, because as an oil-producing country, we found oil in commercial quantities years ago. We do not refine our own oil, and the market price is not set by us. Most of the refined oil that we import, we pay premium price for, and that translates into price at the pumps. Spare parts, many of them are imported, and even the car assembly plants that are being established in the country under this current administration also contribute a quota. So I want to understand what the clear policy is to make sure that these prices come down. If we are importing these things, then it may be hard to bring the prices down as we want. And also it will feed into our import wage bill, which does not minimize government spending in any way, because we spend more money bringing these essential stuff into the transport sector to make sure that we are able to cut goods, we are able to move back and forth.
Yes. Well, I'm proud to say that when I was Minister for Trade and Industry, I initiated a policy, and that's why policy is so important. The policy on vehicle assembly and component manufacturing. So exactly as you're saying, if you don't develop local capacity to assemble and produce and manufacture your own vehicles, which would also then include commercial vehicles, and you're always importing, then obviously, as you said, when you have a depreciating currency and you are importing, it would have an impact on the cost of what you import, spare parts, the vehicles themselves. So the starting point is to have a policy that allows you to start assembling vehicles, commercial trucks, and so forth. And people have not understood the critical role that I've played in government to, even during President Kufuor's time. It was the same thing. You know, President Kufuor's time, people were talking about the golden age of business, you know, and how the business sector was booming. Yes, basically because President Kufuor had a strong person in charge of the private sector. And that's how things work. It's just a question of policy.
But we've heard these before. The Trade Ministry, under which you reminded us you've served twice, had all these elaborate policies, putting up factories to make sure that we're able to process the raw material so we can perform better on the markets locally and internationally. You've been a part of this business. You've been a part of this game. So these things that you're telling us about, they are not all new. There's been an opportunity. So the ideas that you're proposing, industrialization, and the NAR, the one on new agricultural revolution, they're not all new systems. What will be different now from what we've been told before and what has been done in the past?
So what I would really hope that those of you in the media would do is really to read this and read it intensively so that you understand the changes from where we are to where we would be. You see, so if you talk about the fact that, we've been doing what we are...
Some of the suggestions.
So we've been doing some. So that's the first thing. If you find that the content is different, so we are putting more emphasis now on industrialization. That's the first thing. The fact that I was Minister for Trade and Industry, I'm not the president. So I'm saying that if we all agree that industrialization is the key to Ghana's economic revival, then you need somebody who understands industrialization. It's very simple. If you have somebody who understands that, then when it comes to the deployment of resources, then you know where to prioritize.
I have a question on industrialization.
So that's very important. Yes, I've been talking about assembly of vehicles. So within the short time, within 1.5 years, at least you saw what I was able to do. So if Alan becomes president, then it means that you put more emphasis.
There's more where that came from.
Sorry?
So there will be more where that came from. Those ideas came from. A quick one on industrialization. In the current dispensation of high energy costs, what's your plan to ensure that we embark on this industrialization drive whilst keeping energy costs minimum, especially when we are thinking of being green?
You see, when you look at the energy sector, there's what you call the energy mix. So part of it is energy you get from hydro. Part of it will come thermal energy, but the thermal energy infrastructure, the thermal plants that produce electricity for us, you use, let's say, crude oil and then gas. So if you have, let's say, thermal plants that can produce electricity, and you don't have the financial resources to import the crude to feed the thermal plants, obviously
it's not going to work.
It's not going to work. So yes, first you have to create the energy generation infrastructure, but you also then have to be able to find the financial resources to be able to power these plants. It's a major part of it. When you talk about energy transition, it means that you are moving, let's say, from thermal to other sources of energy, solar, wind, so on and so forth. That also requires infrastructure. And so you need to be able to finance that kind of infrastructure. Now, so what you need to create a certain balance in your energy mix that allows you to be able to produce electricity or power at the cheapest cost possible. And in the energy mix, we all know the power sources that have the lowest cost. And so globally, right now, nuclear energy, then you have hydrogen energy, of course, solar, wind, and then hydro. These sources of energy are, in terms of pricing, the lowest. So it's a question of making sure that you transition to these sources that can generate electricity for you at the lowest cost possible. Thermal energy is always more costly than these renewable sources of energy. And that is why we have made proposals that, yes, we've had to install these thermal energy infrastructure at a point in time when we had a challenge with the Akosombo Dam. But then because of the cost of fuel to get energy supplied from thermal energy, we moved to gas. And gas is a cleaner source of energy than crude. But then even with that, you have to consistently move to sources that are cheaper and also generally seem to be greener.
So using alternative sources of energy
yes.
to bring the cost down is your plan.
Yes.
Now let's talk about infrastructure. A big chunk of government monies goes into making sure the roads are there, the hospitals are there, the schools are there. At the same time, not enough taxes are coming in. At the same time, there's more pressure for more outward development.
Yes,
What's the plan? Because you're talking about reducing our debt levels and reducing our expenditure and also reducing our external debts.
Hey, now you are moving into serious economics, Thelma.
So because it's
no, I'm happy about that.
It's key to understanding the direction we want the country to go and the sacrifices that may be required of the citizenry down the line.
But you see, government has the primary responsibility to ensure that you choose the kind of business model that would allow you to be able to provide infrastructure for the people without increasing your debt. So that's the difference. You are absolutely right. Every government has a responsibility to provide infrastructure. And government has to spend if you want to provide roads and then other infrastructure facilities. But it is unfortunate that over the last, how many decades, 6 decades since independence, the thinking of government has always been that it is government's responsibility to finance the development of infrastructure. This is where the problem comes from. If you have to build roads, yes, you have to build roads. There's absolutely no way that a government can run away from building road infrastructure. But it doesn't mean that it is government that has to finance that infrastructure. The approach that is sustainable is for government to provide incentives for the private sector to invest their own capital in building the roads, in building the hospitals. So why does government want to borrow to finance infrastructure when you don't even have the revenue and the income to do that? So it doesn't make sense. Number one, it's not sustainable, and number two, you don't even have the resources. So our model, our business model, is that government, don't worry yourself, just put in the right incentives, and the private sector will find ways of bringing in money to build the infrastructure. If you go to most of the advanced economies, 60 to 70% of the roads are built with private money. All that the government does is to regulate road tolls. Because obviously, if I'm a private man and I construct a road, I need to be able to...
Yeah, because what's in it for the private, the businessman, so if he's building roads?
Yeah, so you have to charge tolls.
You approve of road tolls?
Oh, absolutely. And also, I think there's a certain blockage in our mindset as governments. I mean, it's not only one government, so all the governments, that even if you talk about airport infrastructure, that for security reasons,
We shouldn't bring private people into some certain spaces.
But you go to most of the matured economies, their airport infrastructure is privately owned. So we have to change our understanding and perception of how to finance infrastructure. And that's why we are focused essentially in the GTP on attracting private capital to support infrastructure.
So some messages are coming in from our viewers. We have so many of you watching us on Facebook, GTV Ghana, also streaming at Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. The Honorable Kwadwo Kyerematen, leader of the Movement for Change, is at our table answering some of our questions and yours about what direction he intends to take this country, Ghana, should he get your vote, which would put him above the 50% plus one needed for him to be the next president of our country. Here's one quick message. It said, until Alan empowers Ghanaian businessmen to own our own foundries to manufacture vehicles, etc., he has failed Ghanaians. The cars they assemble here is creating employment for those economies. Do we export those vehicles assembled here? Is one of the messages on our screen. So we are talking a number of topics, from agric to governance to macroeconomic development and industrial revolution and all that comes with it. Also energy sufficiency and all the general plans that Mr. Kyerematen has captured in this document that was launched in Accra, the Great Transformational Plan focusing on stability, growth, resilience, and prosperity. What are your thoughts? 05555610334. Mr. Kyerematen will answer some of your questions now. Valerie is at the screen and will be reading some of the questions to ask. Someone is asking, kindly ask Alan, how many millionaires has he created since he has been the longest serving Minister for Trade?
So let me do you want me to come in now?
Yeah.
The first gentleman that you referred to.
Empowering Ghanaian businessmen to own our foundries.
Our foundries.
Okay.
It's very unfortunate that he probably does not have information about what is going on. In the car automobile manufacturing industry, globally, there's a practice, there's a way that it is developed. You start with you assemble vehicles, and then you move into component manufacturing, and then after that you get into full manufacturing. And so what we have done is to follow the global trend.
So we're at assembly now.
We are at assembly now.
We'll move to component manufacturing, which you call spare parts.
Yes, so you produce all the parts. That's the component that is used for the assembly of the cars. There's no evidence anywhere in the world where any country has started just by producing and manufacturing their own car. It doesn't happen anywhere. But then you assemble first. That also brings the kind of skills that is required. And then you move on to the step. But what we have done in Ghana, which is, I think, so revolutionary, and it's not just Alan talking about, this is applauded and acknowledged globally. We are the first country in a developing world that has been able to attract 5 out of the 6 global auto manufacturing companies at the same time. And it is because of the kind of policy that we introduced. Now, we did not just stop at the assembly. We have a comprehensive program for component manufacturing. And the beauty of this is that we have also been working on the aluminium industry, that's from bauxite, and then steel. You get steel from iron, and you get aluminium from bauxite, and you get plastics from the oil industry. So if you look at our plan, we are working on the aluminium industry, the steel industry, the plastics industry. Now, these are the components, these are the raw materials for component manufacturing. And within a matter of 2 to 3 years, when we are able to generate or start producing aluminium, producing plastics, producing steel, then you will be the first country that will have a fully integrated manufacturing, auto manufacturing industry.
So basically, we can't go into manufacturing overnight. We have to make sure that in order not to import the raw materials that we need, we build the capacity to make our own raw materials and then get into, am I getting you correctly?
You're getting 100%.
And some of our viewers also want the opportunity to ask you some more personal questions, probing questions, and all kinds of questions for the leader for the movement for change, Mr. Kwadwo Kyerematen. What are your thoughts? Valerie is at the screen and she will talk us through some of what you're saying. Val.
Okay, so I'll begin with Mauli Kashi. My question to Alan is, when did he realize that Kwadwo's government is not interested in his ideas, and why didn't he resign earlier? This is from Mauli Newtown. Hello, Thelma. Good job. I want Ghanaians to vote massively for this great man of our land. He has the experience, people, and passive to change the narrative. Please, let's vote as people who do proper critical thinking on national development, not rather on tribal, ethnic, religious, or party, etc. This hasn't worked the past decades. We need change. Okay, so that's from Odame Anderson. Nanofe saying from OEB saying, Mr. Kyerematen, as a presidential candidate for the movement for change, how do you plan to address the ongoing depreciation of the Ghanaian cedi and stabilize the national currency to support economic growth and investor confidence? He says he wishes he can also interview you on his YouTube channel, so that's one. Alhaji Dauda is saying, large numbers of ministers in the government, in my opinion, are the said appointed ministers to be shareholders of the political parties, because funding of politics in Ghana calls for members who have fundraising ability to put in money and are indeed the top qualified to be made ministers of state. That's Alhaji
Let's go through some of these questions. Let's allow Mr. Kyerematen to answer some of them. So first one, when did you realize the NPP did not buy into your vision, and why didn't you leave sooner?
I know this matter comes up all the time. Oh, you were part of the government. What I want the people of this country to understand is that collective responsibility is not the same as individual accountability. The fact that you were part of a government, does it mean that you cannot have your own views about what goes on in government? Obviously not. And everybody who knows about my political career would appreciate that I speak my mind. I've done that all my political life. And people in government now have known my position on these matters all the time. Sometimes I take the position that when you are in a family, you don't wash all your dirty linen, at the same time.
But by leaving, it's a big telltale sign.
Yes, I know people disagree with that position. That yes, you are part of a government. I've helped to bring it to a level where I would have thought that would have moved forward. If I come out and then provide a new sense of direction, people should even applaud me now for being able now to have the courage to come out and say that this is not working.
That's one way. Others may see it as taking credit for the good and then dropping the ball on what may appear to some as not the not so good parts.
No, what is not the good part? I have been the brain behind many of the most important achievements of this government. Many of them. I'm talking because everybody is given a responsibility in government. For example, if there's doomsday, you will not expect the Minister for Trade and Industry to be given an account of why the lights are not
It affects businesses,
but
factories,
I'm saying
production timelines.
To give an account of why. It affects it, and you are interested in it. You want to get the lights on to support your industry. But are you saying that that the Minister for Industry should be held responsible for for national security, for example, or for something that is working in another. It doesn't work like that. Many people do not have any ideas about how governments work. As I said, I've been in government twice. I've helped as much as I can. Now, if things are not going the way that I believe it should, I have every right. And it takes very few people with courage to be able to do that. And that's why I came out. And I'm proud that I came out because people in government understand what I have done in government and what I can do. It's no secret. The things I've been fighting, or I fought for in government, people are aware of the fact that if I become president, this country will change. There's no doubt about that. So it is a question of at the right time.
Right. Someone
at
asked
the right time.
your plan for addressing the depreciation of the cedi, and there was another question on funding of political parties.
Yeah.
And the conversations around should political parties be state funded and whatnot. So depreciation of the cedi, what's the plan?
Yeah, the depreciation of the cedi, as we're talking about
it before.
So depreciation of the cedi, or how you manage your currency, is a question of supply and demand of foreign exchange. And because it's a question of supply and demand, the starting point is you have to do things that will bring you more foreign exchange. That is the starting point. And the only way you can get more foreign exchange is to export. And that is why if you look at my Bible, there's an elaborate program for export development. Within a matter of maximum 3 years, our export revenue will hit not less than $30 billion. Right now, we just depend on cocoa. How much do we get out of it? 2 billion. At best, maybe gold, a very small part of what we earn, But I have been driving this national export strategy. And by 2030, we'll be earning about 25 billion. So the point is that first you need somebody who understands what it will take. And it's a question then of execution once you are in government.
Right. Okay. Let's take a couple of more questions from our screen, and then when we return, we'll try and find some answers for those ones. Valerie, what's the screen saying?
The screen is busy going through a couple of them. Togbe Ghana is saying, no for us. Where were you part of what we're going through? Not again. But he's asking what is he going to do about fuel and Dumso and Galamsey. Also, Dela is saying, Honorable Alan, what's your assessment of the current administration, that's Akufo-Addo's government compared to former President Kufuor's government? Would you say ex-President Kufuor's government was better? Dela is asking this. Okay, so
looks like we have got quite a few more. So bottom up assessment of the current administration under His Excellency Nana Addo and the one under His Excellency.
What is the point for us in spending executive time discussing the past? I'm moving forward.
Okay. You'd rather focus on the future.
Let's focus on the future.
So what's the plan to reduce fuel prices, improve the energy situation with regards to Dumso and then Galamsey? Let's start with fuel.
Okay, very much. Fuel prices, again, is very simple. Because we import fuel, it comes back to the exchange rate. If your local currency is depreciating in value, then obviously when you import, the cost of what you import would always be going much higher because it is your city is depreciating. And so for us to reduce the cost of fuel, two things. We have to fix our foreign currency depreciation. And we've talked about that, how to fix that one. And then secondly also, since we are now producing oil and gas in our country, then we must take steps to add value to our oil and gas resources.
I hear a tall conversation coming up in there.
Yes, and then that will reduce the demand for imported fuel products.
Okay.
Because if you're adding value to your oil and gas, then the issue of depreciation of your currency affecting the cost of fuel will not arise.
Galamsey, this is water from one of our rivers, and we are told that its effect on not just the water bodies but on our broad agric sector and the agric space is telling, and it's beginning to come to bite us all in uncomfortable places. What would be your strategy?
First, Galamsey has to be dealt with in a pragmatic way. If you go to communities where the main occupation is farming, you deal differently with such communities than when you go into areas where the main preoccupation is small-scale mining. So in communities where you have small-scale mining, the reason why we have Galamsey is because the young people who are engaged in small-scale mining do not have the permits and the rights or concession from the Minerals Commission to mine. So it's illegal mine. That's what Galamsey is. That is what Galamsey, illegal mine, because you don't have the permit or the concession to mine. But this is what they do on a daily basis. Like you go to communities where they are also farming on a daily basis. You need to have a progressive way of dealing, because the people are already there. It's not just about talking about stopping Galamsey.
So the Minerals Commission, for example, has been talking about community mining schemes, bringing these groups of illegal miners together and offering them, you know, approved concessions and regulating the activities to ensure. You agree with?
I agree with that, but you see, the implementation so far is not along the lines that we are discussing now. So they have community mining. Community mining, they provide licenses for communities to be able to undertake small-scale mining. My proposal is that whether you like it or not, these young guys are already on the ground. So my proposal is that bring them together and then create companies, not cooperatives, create companies owned by the same young people. So small-scale mining companies owned by the Galamseyers. And then government now, through a program, buys machinery and equipment for these companies. And on a work and pay basis, once they are able to do work and they are productive, whatever they get from that activity becomes what they will use to pay off the loans or whatever that government is able to arrange for them. But the starting point is for the Minerals Commission to license them. Because if they are licensed, then it's no longer illegal mining. So but it's not just about licensing them.
Making sure they do things the way they are expected.
Yes, and the only way you can do that is to provide them with the machinery and equipment, and also to provide them with management support.
Right.
So that's what we are proposed. All these Galamsey young people will now become owners, shareholders of small companies that are run on a professional basis. That is the key.
We'll be wrapping this up in a few minutes. So I'll give you the opportunity to tell the people of Ghana why you want to be president. Why do you want to be president? And what do you have to offer?
I want to lead the process of building a modern, industrialized economy that provides equal opportunity to all its citizens, irrespective of their ethnic, religious affiliation or political affiliation. That process of creating a modern, prosperous society would involve certain policy interventions that will lead to the prosperity that we are all aspiring to. And so by introducing the Great Transformational Plan, which is the policy blueprint to help us get to a stage where we have a prosperous economy, you need a certain kind of leadership. And I believe that, looking at my record, outside government, more importantly outside government, but also within government over the years, I have what it takes: first, the vision, the competence, the integrity, and then the action orientation to be able to lead that process. Yes, I've played my role as a minister in 2 administrations, but I have what it takes to move Ghana forward in a transformational way.
Speak to the people of Ghana
and
look
that is,
at them.
And that is exactly why I'm running for president. And the Great Transformational Plan is the plan of action that will lead us from instability to stability, and then to growth, and then resilience and prosperity. In the Great Transformational Plan, we have not just the promise, but also the plan of action and the roadmap to bring Ghana to where we need to be.
You cannot do it alone, and you have a solid team already, some of whom are with you here today. Who's going to be your running mate?
We'll cross the bridge very soon.
How soon should we expect that announcement?
We'll cross the bridge very soon. I'll come here and make the announcement.
Promise?
Yes, I will.
We will hold you to it, and then we'll expect that we'll talk to you some more as the campaign season gets more and more heated. Well, thank you for making the time to join us and for speaking your vision to us and the people of Ghana. And we pray that those who should listen are listening and they have heard your advocacy. Just before I let you go, there is a political party called Yellow Ghana that has just been making the rounds on traditional and social media. Are they affiliated to you in any way? What's your thoughts on their launch or their presence on the scheme?
They are not affiliated to the movement for change in any way. And because I've been in this game for some time, I know this is an undercover operation to try and destabilize.
An undercover operation by who?
What we are doing. And if you have a situation where for all these years, we've not heard about Yellow Ghana. Now, Alan comes with a magical brand of the movement for change, with a symbol of the butterfly and with this bright yellow, invigorating, color scheme. And then somebody comes out with Yellow Ghana. Yes, I branded my youth wing.
Distracting tool.
My youth wing is the Yellow Army.
Yep.
That's the Yellow Army. Mm-hmm. And now, and people will be shocked. Let's wait till we get to December and let the people decide. So if somebody comes up, it is his right. We cannot stop him. So you come and choose the same colors, yellow and black, and then you have the right. Nobody will stop you.
Right. I wish we had more time, Mr. Kyerematen, but thank you for the time that you already did spend with us. The Honorable Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen is the leader for the Movement for Change, aspiring for the high office of President of the Republic of Ghana. One of the names you will be seeing on your ballot paper come December 7, if the EC approves a final list. And he and his team are hopeful that their name will be on that list. Ahead of that, they've rolled out an extensive, elaborate plan to get you to buy into the vision for a new Ghana driven by a great transformational plan based on stability, growth, resilience, and prosperity. This document is available for you across the internet. You can read it for yourself and find out what his goodies are. We weren't able to get into all the details. His plans for health, education, much of it is in here. If he is your man, listen to his people as they go about crisscrossing the country. Listen to the vision and the story he wants to tell. And on December 7, cast your vote in his favor. Honorable Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen, leader for the movement of change. Thank you, sir, for coming.
Thank you, Selma. We appreciate it.
On GTV. We'll take a quick break. We'll return with more. Stay with us.
Live from GBC.